Hey, I just finished writing up this code post for my website, beautifulruby.com. This is where I post about everything that I build using Rails, just so I can share it. I wrote this article about how I use Ruby objects to create plans for SaaS pricing. But what I want to do is kind of tweak what this thing's going to look like whenever I share this on OpenGraph. And I'm going to do that actually using this little bookmarklet that I have that's going to be replaced with the macOS apps, which I'll actually show you both of those things. All right, so let's hit the bookmarklet, and I want to see like what is this thing going to look like when I share it on Twitter. And here's what we see, right? So if we hit escape, we can go back to the website. And then if we kick this preview on again, here's what I see. Now, this is what's kind of interesting is if we inspect this, we will see that it's actually pointing to content that's on the website. So OpenGraph Plus is actually grabbing this thing that we have defined in our meta tags, which we'll jump into, and it's showing this on the screen. So if we hit escape, then we're back, and I'll show you these meta tags look like and how that thing is being shown on screen, and then we'll change this thing. All right, so if you're familiar with OpenGraph tags, there's a title, a description, a URL, a type, and all that fun stuff. So these are standard OpenGraph meta tags. Now, where things are a bit different is there's these plus meta tags, and this is where the magic happens. One thing you will notice that's missing from here is the image URL, and this thing is currently in development right now, so there's no image URL. I can't render it because OpenGraph's servers are actually on the web, so it can't connect to localhost. So that's why that's not being shown, and that's why we can use this preview tool to see it. Okay, but what are these meta tags? So we have this thing called selector, and then there's a div in here called role OG plus. So if we actually look on our page, we'll inspect this, and we can see I have this div right here called role OG plus, and that is currently highlighting that little plan block. There's some negative margin I have going on here that's why the code is popping outside of that box. But if we looked at this thing inside of OG, it would be nicely framed as we saw in that preview. So that selector is saying, hey, there's a bunch of content on this page, but just find this thing with the CSS selector, role OG plus, and we just want to show that. All right. The other tag that we should take a look at is this thing called viewport width, so 720. And what the viewport does is it's pretty much doing the same thing as this responsive design mode here. So if we set the viewport equal to 720 here, and then Twitter is like roughly half that, so we'll say like 360 or 350, actually 355. Okay, so this is what the preview looks like now. Let's hit OG plus preview again, and we'll see what this thing looks like. Let's look at it on Twitter. And this is, if I share this today, this is what it would look like, which, that looks fine, but I'm starting to add video content to my code posts. And that's the thing that I want to change today. So I hit escape to get out of this. And then, you know what, we'll get out of responsive design mode. That went back to the home page. We don't want that. All right, so let me refresh this so we knock the OpenGraph Plus stuff out of there. All right, so I'm going to open my Rails application, which is where I have this stuff defined. This is what the code looks like. So we're actually going to be editing this layout. I actually want to show the title and the video. I think I'm just going to like not show that little code snippet. I've been doing that for a while, and I don't know, I'm not super into it. So let's just change it out and see what happens. All right, so we have my viewport width there, 720. That's fine. I actually like that. I have a controller for site press. Site press is a gem I use to manage content. I think it's just site controller. Yeah, so here's that rule that says, hey, if this content is the code layout, which is what these articles are, then we want to apply the selector. So let's go ahead and remove that. All right, so select these lines, save. If we hit refresh and I look at the OG preview, that selector is going to be gone. So we should just see the top of the page. Yeah, so not a whole lot changed there, right? Really nothing changed. The viewport in this case is not taking because we're in a browser. And this is where the OpenGraph Plus macOS app comes in. Now, this hasn't been released yet, but the workflow is going to look something like this. You hit share, you hit OpenGraph Plus, And then we can see here it's taking into account the viewport. So um, Twitter, Facebook, they all have like slightly different size pages. So this will show you what it's going to look like on that page. Quick thing about this app, this only works right now for OpenGraph Plus enabled sites. If you use this macOS app today to look at your non OpenGraph Plus pages, you wouldn't see these previews. So keep that in mind. That's something I want to add in the future. I think it would be like pretty awesome actually to have a macOS app where you can just see like all of the OpenGraph takes for any site. But anyway, this is I think this is looking better because it's kind of putting into context more what the user is going to see when they click through to my site. But I'm not really a huge fan of all this like padding and stuff up there. So that's the next thing that we're going to change is we're actually going to edit the CSS on this page, and that will give us a much better sense of um, or sorry, it will give us a much better sense. It's actually just going to make this whole thing render how we want it to. So when I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, you know what, there's like a huge blank spot there. So let's go ahead and take care of that. I'm going to close these controllers. I don't need anything else there. I'm using Tailwind CSS. If you're using plain or vanilla CSS, you can do the same thing. You would be using just regular CSS classes though. So just keep that in mind. This is not something where you absolutely have to have Tailwind to define what's displayed and what's not displayed. All right. So what I can do whenever OpenGraph Plus is enabled in this viewer is I can actually just hide things. So in this case, we have this breadcrumb, which is going to be this little thing up here. And if I save that and then we go over here and hit refresh, that should be hidden, and it is. Now that bubble is still there. That's something that we're going to have to get rid of. But I actually don't think I want to get rid of that. What I think I'm going to do instead is go into this floating layout component, and we're going to change this little thing. We're going to have it change so that it's on the bottom of the screen whenever we're in open graph mode. So what I'm thinking is like I could bump this text up here, shrink the padding down a little bit there, and then put beautiful Ruby in the lower right. So let's see what that looks like. So we're going to say top left. It's already fixed. But what we're going to do is we're going to say bottom for whenever OG plus is enabled. Why do I keep it in 5? And then OG plus. So we're kind of going into the opposite side of the screen. Oh, sorry, right. OG plus right. All right, so we go in here, hit refresh, and that's taking the whole thing, right? So I think fixed is doing that, and what I need to do is somehow unset these. Let's see if, I don't know if, yeah, all right. So auto is going to be the trick here, and then RG plus top auto. I actually don't know if auto is right, but it's kind of working. So awesome. We can see that this is down here now whenever we're in OpenGraph Plus. And we said we want to take the padding down a little bit. So let's see where that is defined. All right, so we have our padding rules here. So we're going to say OG plus PY. Let's cut the padding in half for now just to see what happens. All right, so refresh. We're getting a little bit less padding there. I think the top padding is still, there's still a lot of padding in the top. So let's see what's going on there. I kind of wonder what's defining that padding. There's probably some padding in breadcrumb that, yeah, so there's padding above and below the breadcrumb that's doing that. I actually think I'm just going to hide that breadcrumb and just show a logo. Because like, we don't necessarily need for code to be there. So there's a few ways to do that. I'm going to go back to the code here. And you know what? I think we'll just do this. We'll say class equals OG plus hidden. So we're not in open graph there. So let's go back in here, hit refresh. The code is not hiding. I think there's something going on with this component where it shows it's a Tailwind precedence issue that I'm running into now. And I'm using Daisy UI with this. So I think that's one of the issues that's going on with this thing. But let's see if we can force the padding in this thing to be 0. Yeah, so that's looking a little bit better. Um, we're just gonna have like this little floating thing down here, but like we want less space to be above this because I want to show more of the content of the page. So let's go into um, this thing or this page. I actually think it's in the body layout that's doing this thing, unless we have a title here somewhere. Let's see if oh, here we go. H group. So um, the menu layout container has grid columns. So let's go back into the layout. All right, so here's where all the padding is coming from, and I want less of it whenever there's OpenGraph. So we're going to say OpenGraph PY. I don't know. Let's try 16. So we go back into here, hit refresh. That's still, I think, a bit more spacing on the top than we need. But maybe that's okay. It's okay to have a little bit of spacing. So yeah, we can see like this, I think, looks a little bit better than just the little code thing that we had before. I think I'm going to roll with this. And you know what? Just for fun, I want to show you like why it's important to have dynamic OpenGraph images on your site. So this was just one post that we were tweaking, right? I have a bunch of posts on here. For example, the 37 signals fizzy Kanban board. I want to see what this thing looks like in OpenGraph. So I can just open the OpenGraph app. And we can see like, hey, this thing is now styled for that. So if I share this link, then all of those OpenGraph images are going to be updated for that. And whenever I switch through each social network, it's actually resizing these things a little different. So like Slack has a much smaller OpenGraph image than Twitter. Twitter is like 1200 by 600, and then Slack we can see is much smaller. So if you did this manually, you just wouldn't. And that's why OpenGraph sucks on most sites because they just throw a static image in there and just kind of hope for the best. So if we look at a different layout, other than one with video, like let's look at the Supermail one and see what that looks like. So we're gonna crack this thing open, go into OpenGraph. This one's looking a little weird. I'm pretty sure I have some just rules in there that don't really make sense. Here's what Supermail looks like. And to make sense of that, I have to use this thing to apply the bookmark to it. And then it's like, well, why is it showing us this beautiful Ruby plus thing? And I'm pretty sure I have a logo here that's showing up from a code block layout. And this was some leftovers from the layout that I had before that I was tweaking. So let's check that out. Let's go into my code block component. So code.rb and then block. I wonder where that's coming from. Code block. I got to find that constant. Okay. Yeah. So this is where that logo is appearing. So I need to take the logo out of here, and we actually don't need this anymore, I don't think. So roll OG plus. I'm going to delete this. So that was a wrapper that I had before that I don't think is needed. All right, so we hit refresh. Look at this. Yeah, and we can see that weird logo thing is gone. And let's do a refresh on our thing here. And there we go. So we're seeing that code come back. I think there's probably a little bit of spacing that's left in there. That's something I'm going to chase down, but I think I'm overall much more pleased with that. So I'm going to ship this and call it. And yeah, so this is the idea behind OpenGraph Plus is you can have these images per website or per web page. So that whenever people click this, so this is what they would see on Twitter, and whenever they click through on it, then this is the site that they would see. So again, I share this thing on, I don't know, I share this thing on Twitter, and someone's like, "Oh, super feature plan," and they see the subtitle and they know there's going to be a video in there. So they click on that and then they land on this page. Um, this actually looks really good in Twitter now that they have their or X or whatever it's called these days, where you tap on the thing and it comes down and you see that it gives people the context that they need. It's like, oh, I know whenever I open this link, I'm going to get a video. Um, and this is just automatically generated for all of my web pages. So if you want to add it to your website, go to opengraphplus.com and then sign up in here. There's a get started button will be there if you're not signed in. There's documentation on how to integrate this thing. It works with any HTML, CSS, or HTTP site. It just uses meta tags. I have Rails right now, and I'm going to have a bunch of other integrations. So check that out.